Okay, we're going to try and do some dyeing with this little sachet that you should have found in your little bag of goodies or envelope of goodies. Hopefully they've managed to stay separate. Mine have just mixed up a bit, but you can still work with it. Just a couple of things. These are dyes. They are going to obviously dye anything that they come into contact with. So work on a board or really board an old towel or outside. Also, if you want to wear gloves, that will protect your hands. It's not going to harm your hands unless you have really sensitive skin, but it is going to dye your fingers. But I'm going to not use gloves because I'm hard, sort of thing. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to mix up the dyes and we're going to dye some fabric. So I'm going to start by just cutting the tops off here. I think it's probably going to be the easiest way. So we're going to start like this. Just going to cut the tops off. I've got a sort of just a lukewarm jam jar here, and over here I've just got an old saucepan, and I stress an old saucepan with boiling water in. So you can work either way. Sometimes boiling just takes quicker, the dye takes a little bit quicker. If you're going to use lukewarm water in an old jam jar, that's fine. It will just take a bit longer. You'll need to leave it to sort of soak for a bit longer. So hopefully you can get your spoon in, and we're going to mix up a yellow one here. So put that in. I'm probably going to put about a teaspoon in, that is. Give that a good stir around. Okay, and then I'm going to try and get my red out if I can. I might have to, a bit tricky this. Clearly I made these up before I even attempted to have a go at them. Yeah, I've just got my spoon in. And then that's going to go in my hot one. Okay, so you can, it might be a good idea just to start with the least amount of water, because you can always add more water to dilute it, but they're pretty good at taking on the colour. I'm going to try and use up nearly all my red. It's going to go a little bit yellow there. And again, you can just stir that in. Now, to test your sort of density of colour, what you can do is add small amounts in, and then you can just put a piece of your calico, which you've got in your pack, wet it, and then just put that in there. So you can see your colour. We'll put that one in the red one, and you can test your colour before you get going. Okay, so you can just leave that in. So that's sort of quite an orangey red. It's not a really brilliant red. Okay, yellow's quite nice. That's quite a vibrant yellow. That's quite nice. So if you haven't got enough, you can just add more yellow. So if you want a really intense colour. So the thing with dyeing is add little amounts, because you can always add more, but you can't take it away once it's in. Okay, so give that a good stir, and then you can start to see the intensity of the colour coming through. Okay, so you've been given the primary colours, yellow, red and blue. So of course you can mix your colours to make different colours. So obviously if I then put a bit of blue in, I think this might go a bit peaked on. Let's do it properly. Let's see if I can get my hair. A tiny little bit of blue in. So hopefully that should make a green. So starting to get a very sort of zingy, limey green. And if you add more blue to it, you'll get a more intense green. So of course, if we do the same with the red, and we're going to add blue to red, you should know that that's going to make purple. So I'm going to add a small amount. As again, as I said, you know, small amounts, you can always add more, but once it's in, you can't take it away. And that will take longer, because you've got quite a lot of red in there for that to go to purple. So that one is going to need quite a bit of your blue dye to get that to go to purple. So we're just going to, you don't have to mix your colours. You can literally use them as they are. So if you want to keep them, so you can start to see, that's starting to change colour. It's not the best. I think sometimes to get a really nice purple, it's good to start with the magenta. But that will start to change colour, so you could add all your blue into that one. Okay, so that's mixing your dyes. The next thing you can start to think about is how you're going to do your different sort of designs or shapes, because this is all to do with the resist dyeing. So it's all to do with how you can make things. Tie-dye is probably how you best know it. Always start with wet fabric. You can obviously use some elastic bands, so they form the resist. So you could literally just pick that up, pop that round, and then you need to do a nice figure of 8. So you twist it, put it over, twist it, put it over, twist it. So you're always going to make that nice and tight. So the elastic band is going to act as a resist. So when that goes into your dye bath, the dye isn't going to be able to penetrate underneath that resist, that elastic band, so that should stay the colour of your calico, and then this will all dye. So you could do that all over, and that will then give you lots of little circles. That's quite a traditional way of tie-dye or resist dye. So you could do that. You could also lay it out flat. If you go into the centre and you pick up the centre and you twist this round, can you see we're going to start to make, hopefully, it will make a spiral shape. So you twist that round, keep going, so nice and tight. So it's a nice spiral, and it's easier to see it underneath here. It's sort of picking up the dye off the board, but you should see that that's now making a nice spiral shape. Put an elastic band around it, just to hold it in place that way. Put an elastic bands going the other way just to hold it. And what some people do is they will put about another 2 elastic bands over here, so it sections it into 6 pieces, and then they will just get their paintbrush or a little spoon. You could sort of spoon it in. They dye each section a different colour, and you'll get a rainbow spiral as you take it out, bringing it out that way. So that's a really nice thing to do a spiral tie-dye. The other things you can do is you could just literally concertina it up so it's like a fan. So you've made those in primary school, so do a concertina like that. You could then probably fold that over and concertina it that way. And I think on the PowerPoint you'll see by folding it you can make a sort of grid effect, or you can make sort of squares of colour. And this one you might want to peg it, so you could peg that. You could then put that in your dye bath. So you could put just the bottom bit in and then turn it around to do another one, or you can put elastic bands around it. So I think we're just going to put that one in there. Going to hold that in there. So I quite like that one. You might need to leave that one for quite a while because obviously this is a sort of cold water dye, and it's going to take a little bit longer for the dye to penetrate in onto the cold fabric and the cold water. But you can probably see that where that's pegged, you might want to put another peg in. I can't do it with my left hand. Peg that in there. If you have plastic pegs, they'll be okay, and you can hold that, and that might be able to just rest like that. So you could leave it just like that, go away and come back, see what happens, and then you could alternatively turn that over and you could put the other side on the inside like that and get a different colour coming through. And equally you could get your paintbrush and you could paint your colours in, and you could sort of get quite intense colours that way, because you could, if you were really brave, you could actually go back to your little pigment, get a paintbrush and put your pigment little lines across here and see what happens. So that's really a very sort of rough way to do some, or quick guide to doing some little dyeing using your little pouch that you've got in your packs.